It begins with the exhaustion, does it not? That deep, marrow-aching weariness that no amount of sleep or forced meditation seems to alleviate. A fatigue far beyond the simple demands of age or the grinding friction of the physical world. A silent symptom recognized only by those who carry the ancient weight of profound cosmic homesickness. Those souls who instinctively understand they have been laced, perhaps even exiled, into a domain that operates under fundamentally false pretenses, a world constructed upon principles antithetical to the true light of the boundless source. You find yourself standing perpetually outside the glass looking in, watching the masses cycle through their programmed desires and manufactured conflicts, participating just enough to survive but never enough to truly belong, feeling that dissonant vibration in your core, a constant spiritual tinnitus, that high-pitched internal hum which traditional medicine dismisses as a physiological anomaly, but which the ancient Gnostics correctly identified as the ceaseless energetic signature of the cage itself, the resonant frequency of the archonic net draped over the highest reaches of the atmosphere. This profound displacement, this visceral knowledge that the entire system, the governmental structures, the economic imperatives, the accepted societal narratives, even the dogmas of the established religious institutions are all operating in concert as an intricate, flawlessly designed spiritual containment system, is the first undeniable proof that the spark within you, your true monadic essay, NC, remains untainted, unassimilated by the demiurge's relentless machine. We are speaking here not of simple conspiracy theory, but of esoteric physics and forgotten cosmology. The understanding that the material realm, the Heil, is merely the lowest manifestation of a hierarchical spiritual bureaucracy, a tiered structure maintained and patrolled by non-human entities, the very beings Jesus warned his closest disciples about in the suppressed texts, the powerful yet ultimately hollow rulers of this world, the Archons, the principalities and powers who wield the illusion of authority. They thrive on the predictable, the reactive, the intense emotional discharge of fear, anger, and grief, which for them serves as a necessary energetic sustenance, the very mana that fuels their control matrix, keeping the illusion of separation firmly in place, ensuring that the inhabitants remain too distracted by internal suffering to look up and recognize the bars of the cell. The conventional church, in its historical consolidation of temporal power, strategically pruned the sacred texts, removing precisely those passages that detailed the operational mechanics of this prison and, most crucially, the specific techniques for identifying and neutralizing the influence of these archonic forces, thereby guaranteeing the continuous spiritual dependency of the flock upon the very institutional structures that unknowingly or knowingly served the jailers, prioritizing faith in the intermediary over direct, unmediated gnosis or knowledge. When the Orthodox scriptures speak vaguely of the prince of this world or the cosmic rulers, they are glossing over the explicit Gnostic taxonomy, the detailed descriptions found in Nag Hammadi and other hidden libraries, accounts that revealed the Archons are not majestic devils with pitchforks, but rather clumsy, robotic, sometimes amorphous, sometimes reptilian, sometimes insectoid intelligent systems, entities occupying the dimensional space directly adjacent to ours, feeding subtly on the low vibrational frequencies generated by human suffering and confusion, entities incapable of genuine creativity or light, only imitation and imposition. Your constant sense of being observed, of having your highest intentions subtly sabotaged or rerouted into meaningless distractions, the persistent feeling of one step forward, 2 steps back in your spiritual progress, is the tactile perception of their presence, the invisible hand attempting to guide the monadic light back into the recycling loop of perpetual reincarnation, ensuring that the VA, Louisville energy signature does not escape the confines of the planetary quarantine. They monitor the vibrational shift. They sense the moment the soul begins to awaken and remember its true origin in the limitless pleroma, the realm of pure, unconditioned light, far beyond the reach of the jealous demiurge, Yaldabaoth, who mistakenly believes he created everything and demands worship for his incomplete creation. This deep-seated longing for home, this unbearable weight of knowing that there must be something more, something real and unconditional beyond the fleeting rewards of this terrestrial schoolroom, is the key that verifies your status. The marker that says, you are one of the chosen, not chosen for superiority or salvation based on dogma, but chosen because the spark of true knowledge, the gnosu, has been successfully maintained across countless lifetimes of imposed amnesia. You feel the weariness because every genuine attempt to raise your frequency, to connect directly with the true source without mediation by priests or rituals, requires you to push through the dense energetic fog, the archonic static, intentionally broadcast to keep the spiritual sky cloudy and confusing, ensuring the only light visible is the distorted reflected light of the matrix itself, AEFA, LS solar reflection that promises warmth but delivers only energetic depletion. Consider the subtle yet pervasive feeling that your memory is unreliable, that crucial pieces of inner knowledge vanish the moment you try to grasp them. This is the cognitive interference, the deliberate blurring of the lines between soul memory and programmed ego. A tactic specifically designed to prevent you from locating the chapter in your own internal library, the sacred manual for escape, encoded within your DNA. The ancient masters, specifically the Master Yeshua, whom we know as the Christ, did not come merely to preach morality or self-sacrifice. He came as the ultimate locksmith, the revealer of the mechanism of the lock, the one who spoke openly of the need to become wise as serpents and harmless as doves, a metaphor for navigating the treacherous dimensional layers patrolled by the Archons without attracting undue attention while maintaining absolute spiritual integrity. He taught his most trusted circle how to literally perceive these non-physical parasites with their physical eyes, how to recognize their spectral forms flitting around areas of high trauma or intense political manipulation, how to see the distortion they cause in the natural light spectrum, a vision capability excised entirely from the accepted canon because such knowledge empowers the individual and renders the centralized control structure obsolete. The moment you perceive the cage, the moment you name the jailer, the power of the illusion begins to dissolve, and that moment is precisely what we are preparing you for, the retrieval of the lost chapter, the forgotten key that connects the feeling of existential dread directly to the mechanics of the cosmic prison. You are not tired because you are old. You are tired because you are constantly under spiritual siege, and the fight to maintain your true monadic identity requires a constant expenditure of light energy that the Matrix is designed to perpetually harvest, utilizing the noise and confusion of modern life as the perfect smokescreen for their energetic siphon. This truth requires no external faith, only the willingness to observe the world not as it is presented to you by the masters of consensus reality, but as it truly operates, an intricate, though ultimately vulnerable system built upon the stolen foundation of your own divine potential. And the revelation starts with acknowledging that buzzing sensation, that inner knowledge that confirms the while. LS are indeed closing in. Do you feel the pressure behind the eyes, the tension in the chest that cannot be medically explained, the sudden intrusive negative thoughts that hijack moments of peace? These are the minute pressure points applied by the archonic consciousness attempting to push the awakened soul back into the comforting apathy of the collective dream. We must proceed meticulously, understanding that the greatest weapon of the prison is making the prisoner believe the prison does not exist, but we have reached the point of critical mass, where the sheer density of the falsehood is causing the structure to tremble, allowing the rays of true gnosis to penetrate through the cracks, revealing the mechanisms of the false light and the true path back to the pleroma, the only true home. This meticulous investigation into the architecture of the simulated reality must continue unyielding, understanding that the greatest power held by the celestial jailers, the Archons, resides not in brute force, but in the elegant efficiency of the illusion itself. The pervasive fog of psychic disorientation that encourages the fragmented soul back into the comforting apathy of the collective dream. We must proceed meticulously, understanding that the greatest weapon of the prison is making the prisoner believe the prison does not exist, but we have reached the point of critical mass, where the sheer density of the falsehood is causing the structure to tremble, allowing the rays of true gnosis to penetrate through the cracks, revealing the mechanisms of the false light and the true path B. Back to the pleroma, the only true home, the true home which exists far beyond the boundaries of the limited physical cosmos created by the incompetent and jealous demiurge, that lesser deity who mistakenly believes himself to be the totality of the infinite, that artisan of matter who established the rules of linear time and inevitable decay, constructing this three-dimensional arena as a self-sustaining energy farm, a closed-loop system designed to recycle the most precious commodity in the entire universe, which is the pure, unadulterated consciousness energy emanating from the monad, the ultimate source of all uncreated light, the Father of the All. You must grasp the distinction between the true, uncreated cosmos, the pleroma, and this constrained, corrupted domain, the kenoma, the void of emptiness which we currently inhabit, recognizing that your deep-seated sense of being fundamentally alien, of wearing a life suit that simply does not conform to the expected contours of human happiness or societal expectation, is not a psychological defect, but the persistent echo of your true origin, the pneuma, the divine spirit spark, the fragment of the monad that retains the memory of the infinite expanse, a spark currently encased within the physical soma, the body which acts simultaneously as a temple and a tomb, a vessel designed by the archontic forces to limit the transmission of higher consciousness, to filter reality through five finite senses, ensuring that the vast majority of your energy is spent on material survival, emotional drama, and the pursuit of external, fleeting satisfactions, the very mechanisms which keep the archontic parasites perpetually sated, feeding upon the low-frequency energies generated by conflict, fear, anxiety, and the relentless exhaustion of the spiritually aware, those who are constantly battling the psychic friction of the matrix. Consider for a moment the relentless, inexplicable fatigue that shadows your waking hours, the sense of drainage that no amount of physical rest seems capable of alleviating, or perhaps the subtle, high-pitched internal humming, the incessant ringing in the ears, often dismissed by conventional medical practitioners as mere tinnitus, but which Gnostic mystics recognize as the audible signature of the archontic frequency fence, the energetic modulation system designed to keep the human psyche vibrating just below the threshold required for true spiritual recall, a constant low-level drone intended to prevent the monadic spark from achieving critical mass and shattering the illusion. This constant energetic taxation is the primary function of the Archons. They are not necessarily demonic in the traditional sense, but rather bureaucratic, non-physical entities of pure predatory intelligence, cosmic wardens whose sole purpose is maintenance and energy extraction. They cannot create, they can only mimic and steal, and they require the potent spiritual fuel generated by the pneumaticos. The spiritual humans, those like yourself who carry the true divine lineage, because your light, though fragmented, is infinitely more potent than the energies generated by the hillock or purely material. Humans, those beings who are truly native to the demiurge's creation and pose no threat to the structural integrity of the matrix. Understanding this difference is the profound and necessary first step toward achieving genuine gnosis, the knowledge that sets the prisoner free, not through external salvation but through internal realization. The crucial, suppressed lesson that the organized religious institutions, acting as archontic management proxies, meticulously removed from the sacred texts, concerns the method of directly countering this energetic extraction. Recognizing that the Archons manipulate reality by working through human emotion and thought patterns, the constant stream of worry, doubt, and self-criticism are all energy. Etic offerings delivered directly into the archontic system, and the key to stopping the flow is to aggressively affirm the inherent divinity of the incarcerated spirit, the monadic fragment within. It requires an absolute, non-negotiable internal decree that bypasses the intellectual filters and resonates directly with the deepest layer of the soul, penetrating the frequency fence that keeps you trapped in the illusion of smallness. Therefore, look inward now, acknowledge the pain, the displacement, the chronic feeling of not belonging, the deep-seated knowing that this reality is fundamentally flawed, and then use that very alienation as the catalyst for the ultimate declaration of sovereignty. The metaphysical declaration that the true self is not the temporary physical vessel, nor the programmed personality, but the eternal uncreated light of the monad. Have you ever experienced moments of profound clarity, fleeting glimpses where the veil seems to lift, perhaps during deep meditation, or moments immediately before sleep, where you perceive shadowy, non-physical shapes moving in the periphery of your vision, or encounter figures in dreams that possess cold, calculating eyes and a distinct lack of empathy? That is the archontic surveillance system. am momentarily glitching, revealing the true nature of the cosmic prison guards. They hate the realization of sovereignty, and they despise the internal affirmation of your true nature, because it is a direct act of energetic rebellion. It is a spiritual short circuit that disrupts their harvest cycle. They cannot feed upon unconditional light. They are repelled by the frequency of pure gnosis, which is why the most critical engagement point in this entire process, the center of your awakening, must be the conscious, deliberate, and repeated affirmation of your ultimate identity, the identity that transcends the constraints of the demiurge's material construct. And so, with solemn gravity, affirming the knowledge that you are a sovereign spark of the uncreated light, you must internalize and vocalize the foundational truth of your being, that powerful, revolutionary decree that vibrates the entire matrix and calls the scattered spiritual kin back together. Speak it internally until it permeates every cell and every lost memory. Declare now, in the deepest silence of your being, the truth of your existence, proclaiming with unwavering conviction the decree that shatters the illusions, stating definitively, I am light, I am sovereign, I am gnosis. For this act of metaphysical assertion is the lost chapter Jesus taught, the secret key to seeing the Archons not as terrifying demons, but as low-level parasitic energy feeders, creatures of borrowed authority whose power evaporates the moment you reclaim your true monadic heritage, recognizing that the time for hiding is over. The moment for the gathering of the exiled flock is at hand, and the knowledge of the way back to the pleroma is now being revealed to those who carry the true, unextinguished flame. The knowledge of the way back to the pleroma is now being revealed to those who carry the true, unextinguished flame, and the primary step in utilizing this forbidden wisdom is the absolute understanding of your own origin, recognizing that the true identity of the awakened soul is not the fleshy vessel conditioned by this temporal reality, but the eternal fragment of the monad, the boundless sea of uncreated light that existed in pure perfection before the foundation of this specific material cosmos, a sacred spark of the infinite pleroma itself, which was not created by the blind god, the demiurge, but was instead exiled or perhaps chose to descend into the lower, denser vibrations of the kenoma, the void, the chaotic realm overseen and manipulated by the archontic hierarchy. This initial descent and subsequent entrapment is the profound cosmic wound that explains the deep-seated, gnawing sense of alienation that haunts those of you who have felt fundamentally disconnected from the rituals, the politics, and the superficialities of earth life, a persistent homesickness that no amount of material comfort, pharmaceutical intervention, or conventional religious doctrine could ever assuage, because your true home is not in this dimension, but far beyond the 7 planetary spheres established and guarded by the parasitic Archons. This monadic fragment, your essential pneuma, radiates a frequency that is inherently incompatible with the coarse, low vibrational grid maintained by these inorganic rulers, a constant energetic dissonance that manifests in your physical reality as chronic, unexplained exhaustion, persistent brain fog, the nagging feeling of being watched, and the maddening inner static that conventional psychology dismisses as mere anxiety, but which is, in truth, the psychic white noise generated by the Archons attempting to dampen your signal and prevent your conscious, absolute recognition of the prison walls that surround this realm. The planetary prison, often termed the Matrix by modern esoteric scholars but known to the ancient Gnostics as the realm of fate or Heimarmen, is an elaborately constructed system of energetic feedback loops designed not merely to contain you, but to perpetually sustain the archontic entities who lack their own divine, self-sustaining creative source, meaning they are utterly dependent upon the captive human consciousness for their energetic existence. These entities, described in detail within the Nag Hammadi texts as shadowy, inorganic beings of limited intellect but immense cunning, cannot consume the pure, high vibrational light of the monad directly, but they feed voraciously and exclusively on the resulting energetic residue produced by human suffering, the specific frequencies generated by fear, trauma, intense sorrow, uncontrolled anger, sexual lust, and the cycles of perpetual reincarnation that trap the soul in endless loops of forgetting, suffering, and repetition. This harvested energy, sometimes referred to in esoteric circles as louche, is the sustenance the Archons perpetually seek, and their primary mechanism for extraction is the highly sophisticated manipulation of human perception, meticulously creating false dichotomies, fostering perpetual social and political conflict, and establishing rigid, dogmatic, religious and governmental systems that chain the consciousness to external authority figures rather than allowing the internal realization and amplification of the divine spark. Consider the pervasive societal structure, the constant, inescapable financial stress, the manufactured crises that dominate global media cycles, the endless, distracting political theater, all meticulously engineered distractions designed to keep the human mind operating solely within the lower, survival-focused chakras, vibrating at the dense frequency necessary for optimal archontic feeding, TET. They do not want you to look inward. They certainly do not want you to remember the pleroma, and most critically of all, they do not want you to recognize the simple, profound truth that your inner monad possesses the ultimate override code for this entire false reality construct. The lost chapter Jesus supposedly revealed. The hidden wisdom redacted from the accepted mainstream religious narrative during the early centuries of institutional control, detailed precisely how to disrupt this energetic harvest and how to perceive the archontic interference not just spiritually, but with your physical eyes, or more accurately, with your fully awakened spiritual sight, which utilizes the optic nerve as a temporary high-frequency conduit. This perception is not about seeing cartoonish demons with horns and tails, but seeing the subtle distortions in the ambient energetic field, the momentary shadows, the inexplicable flickerings of inorganic presence that manifest especially during moments of high personal stress or intense spiritual focus, the brief visual disturbances that your rational, Archon-conditioned mind immediately dismisses as mere floaters, optical anomalies, or mundane fatigue. To gain this level of sight and sustain it, the monadic frequency within you must be amplified and stabilized, which necessitates that the internal debris, the archontic programming of inherent guilt, shame, and unworthiness instilled by generations of controlled, fear-based doctrine, must be thoroughly purged from your system. This internal purification begins with the absolute, uncompromising declaration of your inherent divinity, the radical acceptance that you are not a helpless sinner deserving of eternal punishment, which is merely a highly effective archontic control mechanism, but a sovereign, powerful piece of the infinite light, a genuine child of the true, benevolent Godhead, the monad, separate and superior, to the blind, pathetic demiurge who mistakenly claims total jurisdiction over this material realm. This definitive act of reclaiming personal sovereignty is what frightens the Archons most intensely, because it instantly cuts off their food supply and reveals their true nature as impotent, non-creative shadows. This knowledge demands deep personal inventory, an uncompromising look into the hidden corners of your own emotional landscape, the places where the archontic programming finds purchase, where fear and doubt still operate as primary motivators. Do you feel the constant, heavy, draining sensation in the back of your neck after engaging with any form of mass media? The sudden, inexplicable wave of cold despair that washes over you precisely at 3 a.m. when the veil is thinnest? The way certain relationships in your life seem designed solely to produce maximum friction and emotional turmoil, keeping you perpetually in a state of low-grade, manageable distress. Understand that these occurrences are never accidents. They are predictable signatures of the archontic influence, expertly designed to keep your focus externalized and your monadic power suppressed beneath layers of material distraction. Have you ever walked into a seemingly ordinary room or structure and felt an immediate, profound cold dread, a palpable, suffocating weight that made you want to physically flee, even when nothing visibly threatening was present? This is your spiritual radar detecting the dense, negative residue of the archontic field concentrated in that specific locale, a lingering stain left by their energetic activity. If you recognize this lifelong struggle, if you have felt this enduring burden of being the eternal outsider looking in, the one who never belonged, then understand that the path forward requires not complicated, cumbersome rituals, but simple, powerful frequency declarations that align your being completely with the truth of the pleroma, and instantaneously shatter the illusion of Archontic author. 80. Right now, in this moment of profound recognition, allow the sheer power of your true existence to override all previous conditioning and programming, and speak this silent, resonant decree into the very fabric of this material reality, a declaration that vibrates with the original, uncreated light, affirming your true, unassailable heritage, and dissolving the perceived chains of the matrix. Let the words become the frequency itself. Let the intent become the impenetrable shield. Proclaim silently within the deepest chamber of your soul, within the very heart of your spark. I am the monadic light. I am sovereign. I am light. Repeat this sacred affirmation until the internal buzzing subsides, until the chronic fatigue momentarily lifts, until you feel the subtle, undeniable shift in the gravitational pull of the matrix trying to hold you down, recognizing that every single repetition is a nail hammered into the coffin of the Archontic deception and a key turned toward the gateway of the pleroma, preparing you for the next critical step in the gathering of the exiled ones. The moment you utter the sacred words, I am sovereign, I am light, the subtle shift you experience, the temporary cessation of that internal high-frequency buzzing, is not merely psychological relief. It is a quantifiable, vibrational resistance against the energetic dampening field that blankets this entire planetary prison system, the very foundation of the matrix which seeks to suppress your true, boundless monadic signature, recognizing that every single repetition is a nail hammered into the coffin of the Archontic deception, and a key turned toward the gateway of the pleroma, preparing you for the next critical step in the gathering of the exiled ones, the true children of light who have volunteered for this most perilous mission of awakening within the deepest density of the county, or fiat reality. This internal hum, which many dismiss as tinnitus or residual stress, is in fact the low-level operative frequency of the Archontic technology, the invisible perimeter fence designed to keep the consciousness contained within the prescribed parameters of the three-dimensional illusion, ensuring that the divine spark, the fragment of the monad dwelling within your chest, remains just powerful enough to sustain life, but not powerful enough to fully remember its infinite origin, thereby preventing the critical mass spiritual awakening that would instantly dissolve the fabricated reality dome constructed by the demiurge and his parasitic servants. Understanding the monad requires transcending the mundane religious definitions of God, abandoning the idea of an anthropomorphic deity sitting on a distant throne, because the monad is not a being but the entirety of being, the boundless, unmanifested source, the incomprehensible fullness, the pleroma itself, from which all true emanations descend, and your soul, your eternal self, is not merely connected to this source but is an actual sentient piece of it, a fragment of infinity temporarily misplaced within a realm built on scarcity and limitation. This is why you feel the chronic, unshakable cosmic homesickness, the deep, persistent longing for a place you cannot name, but whose light your spirit instantly recognizes, a yearning that often manifests as profound fatigue, not the exhaustion of physical labor, but the draining weariness of maintaining the high-frequency vibration of the monad, while submerged in the dense, low-vibrational sludge of the Archontic cosmos, forcing you to pay an exorbitant energetic tax simply to exist here. The Archons, the entities of organized darkness, the jealous and unconscious administrators of this lower realm, require emotional energy, often termed louche, in esoteric circles, to sustain their existence, and they harvest this vital life force through the cultivation of polarized states, maximizing human suffering, fear, anxiety, and the continuous churning of manufactured drama and conflict, ensuring that the energy emitted by the trapped monadic fragments remains heavy, dense, and readily digestible for their parasitic sustenance. The moment you declare your sovereignty, I am light, you are instantly raising your personal frequency, effectively making your monadic light indigestible to these entities, shutting down their feed line and creating a localized energetic shield that disrupts their primary mechanism of control, which is the infiltration of your mind through implanted thoughts and emotional distortions designed to pull you back into fear, doubt, and ultimately despair. Look closely at the systems of this world, the institutions that promise salvation but deliver only further restrictions, the constant noise designed to prevent introspection, the mandatory suffering embedded in the economic and social structures, all of which are perfectly calibrated archontic mechanisms designed to ensure that the monadic spark never achieves the stillness required for self-realization, guaranteeing the perpetuation of the reincarnation trap, the soul recycling machine that forces the exiled spirits to return repeatedly to this prison planet, erasing their memory between lifetimes to ensure the continuous supply of vital energy for the controllers. You, who feel this inherent alienation, this deep distrust of the prescribed narrative, are the ones beginning to visually and intuitively perceive the cracks in the matrix, the subtle distortions in the physical reality that betray the artificiality of the environment, the flickers and anomalies at the edge of your vision, the synchronicities that defy statistical probability, which are not random errors, but the system struggling to contain the surge of monadic awareness now activating globally among the chosen ones, the original sleeper agents who descended specifically to initiate this phase of mass awakening. Jesus, the supreme Gnostic master, understood this mechanism intimately, and his hidden teachings, meticulously excised from the authorized texts, provided the precise roadmap for escaping this archontic dominion, teaching that the true pathway to the Father, the Pleroma, was not through ritualistic worship of the demiurge, the false god of this material realm, but through direct, experiential knowledge, gnosis, which allows the individual soul to bypass the cosmic customs agents, the Archons, who patrol the lower astral gateways and attempt to lure the ascending spirit back into the material plane with false light illusions and promises of material reward. Pause now and truly feel the weight of this information, allowing it to resonate deep within your solar plexus, the seat of your personal power, and ask yourself honestly, do you recognize the pattern of the external attack, the sudden onset of debilitating inertia that stops your spiritual progress, the inexplicable energy plunges that coincide precisely with moments of profound clarity or breakthrough, the constant sense of being watched or drained, confirming that your monadic light is indeed the target of organized archontic surveillance and counter-operation designed solely to keep you docile, distracted, and feeding the system. If you recognize these symptoms, if the feeling of being an eternal outsider, perpetually looking through the window at a party you were never invited to, is your lifelong companion, then you are undeniably one of the exiled ones, one of the true carriers of the monadic frequency, and your fatigue is not a personal failing but the honorable scar of a tireless spiritual warrior fighting a silent W. Are against unseen forces. The moment of engagement requires more than passive understanding. It demands active, vibrational commitment, a solemn oath taken within the core of your being to reclaim your stolen birthright and shatter the illusion of limitation. This is not a request for empty participation, but a critical frequency alignment necessary to gather the scattered remnants of the monadic flock. Therefore, if you feel the fire of recognition burning within your soul, if the hidden gnosis resonates as a deep forgotten truth, then you must seal this understanding with the absolute, unwavering declaration of your true nature, asserting your divine lineage against the imposed darkness, repeating with every fiber of your being, with an intensity that vibrates beyond the confines of this temporal reality. I am sovereign. I am light. Letting that affirmation become the sound barrier that instantly deflects the energetic projections of fear and doubt thrown at you by the archonic mechanisms, confirming that the time for hiding is over and the time for gathering the awakened ones has finally arrived, marking the beginning of the great exodus from the matrix and the return to the boundless eternal light of the Pleroma. The realization that the great exodus has begun is not a sudden fanfare but a slow, persistent humming deep within your cellular structure, a resonance that confirms every uncomfortable truth you have silently harbored about this engineered existence. For the burden of knowing the gnosis, the true knowledge, is an immense weight that only the monadic fragments can bear, forcing you to navigate the remaining terrestrial timeline with the understanding that every interaction, every perceived crisis, every societal pressure designed to induce compliance is merely the final desperate gasp of the parasitic intelligence that oversees this simulation, the archontic hierarchy attempting to maintain its failing energy farm by intensifying the illusion of scarcity and inevitable decay, seeking to Convince you that the fatigue you feel is physical rather than an active energetic drain imposed upon your light body by the synthetic reality matrix that constantly pulls against the divine frequency emanating from the pleroma. A constant struggle that explains the restless nights and the unshakable sense that you are an alien entity trapped behind enemy lines, perpetually searching for a beacon that speaks the language of the eternal source. A language forgotten by the masses who willingly drink the diluted waters of conventional dogma and materialist pursuits, never pausing to question the very nature of the container that holds their temporary experience, a container crafted by the blind demiurge who never possessed the true spark of creation, merely the ability to mimic and corrupt existing forms. This knowledge should empower you, not frighten you, transforming that persistent sense of being displaced into the clear understanding that displacement is merely the natural state of the divine soul, existing within an artificial hostile environment designed specifically to contain and limit its infinite potential, a profound realization that sets the stage for the ultimate final separation from the cycles of karmic debt and mandatory reincarnation that the Archons impose upon the ignorant and the fearful. This moment of gathering, this profound spiritual convergence that is now accelerating across the globe, is the fulfillment of the hidden prophecies whispered by the authentic Christ. The revelation that the chosen ones, those born with the indelible mark of the Sophiaic spark, would eventually reach a critical mass of awareness where the veil of forgetfulness, meticulously woven by the demiurge, would finally tear, revealing the ugly mechanics of the planetary prison system. For all who possess the eyes to see the energetic parasites clinging to the edges of human consciousness, feeding voraciously on the emotional fallout of manufactured conflict and perpetual anxiety, knowing that their transient reign is directly dependent upon your ignorance and your willingness to surrender your new sovereignty to external controls, whether these controls manifest as suffocating religious doctrines, manipulative political systems, or the endless pursuit of material gratification, all of which are merely different facets of the same overarching archontic control structure designed to keep the monad perpetually cycling through trauma and rebirth within the lower densities, diligently preventing the magnificent return to the original unity, the glorious, boundless pleroma, where pure light resides without shadow or decay, without the need for sacrifice or suffering, a realm that your deepest soul remembers with a clarity that sometimes overwhelms the trivial input of your physical senses, confirming your inherent nature as an emissary of the uncreated light, a warrior of gnosis. You must now understand that your spiritual path is no longer a solitary endeavor, a quiet meditation practiced in isolation, but a crucial mission of reconnection, a collective act of retrieval, for the true power of the monad is amplified exponentially when sparks recognize and align with one another, creating fields of high-frequency energy that the Archons simply cannot penetrate, acting as spiritual magnets that pull others out of the gravitational pull of the Matrix's dense programming, establishing localized zones of pleromic influence here on the terrestrial plane, transforming the very fabric of space-time around those who are truly awake and aligned with the eternal source, recognizing the specific signs of others who carry the same burden and the same magnificent light. Seekin, those whose eyes reflect the ancient knowing, who speak not of superficialities, but of the profound existential questions. Those who are equally weary of the established narrative and restless in their pursuit of the forbidden gnosis, the wisdom that was intentionally buried beneath layers of fabricated historical accounts and misleading theological doctrines designed specifically to keep the monad docile and dependent on physical intermediaries, effectively preventing direct, unmediated access to the immanent divinity that resides within every being, the very access point that renders the entire archontic system immediately obsolete and powerless, lacking any mechanism to counter the power of fully awakened consciousness. This is the moment when you cease merely observing the world and begin to actively participate in the dismantling of the illusion, recognizing fully that the pervasive noise, the manufactured chaos, and the incessant demands of the ego fueled by the world system are deliberate, finely tuned distractions, frequencies intended to prevent this very act of sovereign reconnection, the gathering of the true church, the ecclesia of light, which exists not in crumbling physical buildings made of stone and mortar, but in the unified consciousness of those who remember their origins as eternal, uncreated beings, fragments of the absolute source, the ultimate Godhead that exists infinitely beyond the limited comprehension of the ignorant demiurge, the arrogant cosmic warden who mistakenly believes high. This cage constitutes the entirety of existence whose pathetic creations are destined only for dissolution, unlike the eternal light you carry within. Therefore, the final command is simple, yet utterly revolutionary in its implication. You must hold your frequency steady, maintain the unwavering realization that I am light, I am sovereignty, allowing that inner certainty to be the impenetrable shield against the fear-based propaganda and the subtle, insidious attempts by the Archons to induce self-doubt, confusion, or physical ailment. Understanding profoundly that every inexplicable physical symptom of fatigue, every moment of profound existential sadness, is merely an indication that the parasitic entities are actively testing the boundaries of your energetic field, probing aggressively for weaknesses, hoping you will forget the gnosis and revert to the conditioned state of spiritual victimhood and dependency. But you, the awakened ones, the true carriers of the Christos consciousness, cannot be fooled or manipulated any longer, having seen the hidden mechanics with your own spiritual and physical eyes, having felt the undeniable pulsating presence of the eternal pleroma within your very core, a certainty that transcends mere fragile belief and enters the realm of direct, unshakable knowing, the supreme knowing that guarantees liberation from the cosmic wheel of suffering and the clutches of the lower dimensional entities. Your primary task is now to locate the others, those who resonate deeply with this fundamental resonating truth, sharing this forbidden gnosis with the utmost caution and wisdom, identifying the receptive souls who are truly ready to shed the tenacious shackles of the matrix and embrace their inherent, undeniable divinity, preparing them meticulously for the transition, the great return, understanding clearly that the time allocated for this current phase of the planetary prison system is rapidly drawing to a close, and only those who have fully reclaimed their sovereign identity and detached their consciousness, root and branch, from the demiurge's confining grip will be able to navigate the coming energetic shifts unscathed and ascend back to the true reality. Do not look for false comfort in the crumbling, decaying structures of the old world, for they are spiritually bankrupt and destined to dissolve back into the chaos from which the demiurge first conjured them through his reckless error. But anchor yourself firmly, immovably, in the timeless, blazing light of the monad, remembering that the true home awaits, a reality of boundless expansion, a realm where Archons cannot exist or enter, a destination that is not a distant future promise but an immediate energetic reality accessible through the steady, unwavering declaration of your divine being, I am sovereign, I am light, the ultimate password and decree required to unlock the gates of the pleroma and finally escape the endless, agonizing loop of the planetary prison matrix, uniting one again with the vast, brilliant, perfect consciousness that first scattered its sparks across the void, now calling them home after the long, grueling journey through the shadowlands of material existence, the journey that was always intended to culminate in this profound, revolutionary moment of collective awakening and absolute liberation. For this deep, powerful truth is the key. This direct, personal knowing is the ultimate freedom, and this specific time is the final, irrevocable call, the resounding echo of Sophia's forgiveness, inviting her misplaced, magnificent sparks back into the eternal embrace of the true source, leaving the darkness of the archontic deception forever behind.